What does side effects hide from you behind the scenes and off camera? In the horror game Side Effects, you'll take part in what may be the craziest set of clinical trials ever constructed. You've got a buddy along for the ride at the very least, and it's your job to make sure their experience is much worse than yours in this grim game of roulette. Today, we're taking a look behind the curtain in search of things we're not meant to see, like these friendly gents behind the glass. We're also going to break this game in every way I know how. So I hope you enjoy today's strange look into side effects. When the game begins, you'll find yourself in this claustrophobic space with a very friendly face looking back at you. The dispenser comes into sight to depict a set of pills, and accompanying them is a symbol showing the effect they'll have when consumed. They can either lower your resistance or straight up punch your ticket after being taken, with very few ways of knowing which it is. Items are selected by both participants to aid in your survival, shifting the tide on who will take the fatal dose and who will live on to deal with the side effects. If your heart runs out, it's game over. So you've got to consider each move carefully to avoid a less than ideal ending. That's really the basics of the game, so I'll explain the rest as we go along. Now jumping back, the first stop on our journey today is of course the title screen. If you view this area from another perspective, the illusion is broken. The widescreen was a lie all along. These black bars are actually just floating in the map to partially cover your screen, which is not how I expected this to work. This is used a lot in the game itself too, and it gets funnier the more you think about it. Besides this, the level construction is as simple as can be. It's only a singular room with a computer in the center, and it floats forever in the endless void of blue. Now starting the first round, I once again pulled the camera back to find that this level isn't much more complicated than the title screen. The entire level is built on top of a small platform, and it consists of two pretty cramped rooms. Considering all the gameplay takes place at a singular table, I'm not surprised they kept it so simple. Inside the play area, I made a shocking discovery. The side effects had already started and my head was missing. During each match you play, your character is operating Sleepy Hollow style, totally headless. The rest of your body is still intact, and I'll explain the lack of assets above the shoulders in a little bit. But I just needed you to know what we're dealing with here. Beyond this, I'm beginning to doubt the safety measures in this medical facility. For reference, there's an IV placed in your arm this entire time, but the bandages they use don't care much for gravity, and the needle isn't any better. Sometimes finding a vein during a doctor's visit is tricky, but these guys have clearly just given up across the board. At the very least, it looks pain-free. I wanted to explore more of this map, but I was immediately stopped in my tracks when I looked beneath the table to find this. These guys were getting a bit too comfy for such a high-stakes game, to the point of fusing together foot first, like a scene from The Thing. I genuinely had to do a double take when seeing this at first, and it's somehow even weirder looking back at it again. For the moment, we'll turn our attention away from this misguided thumb war to focus on three other specimens occupying the space. Behind the glass on the right, we'll find three awkward fellows who clearly have nothing better to do. These characters, labeled in the game's files as observers, are placed behind the glass, where they do exactly as their name suggests. I didn't even notice them at first, so you can imagine my shock when seeing these friendly faces waiting on the other side. Their presence serves a single purpose: loiter here and stare through the glass to make you feel as uncomfortable as possible. The location they occupy is a nearly empty room, with the only other object inside being this machine that dispenses our, sour Skittles. It just seemed rude for them to stand on the other side of the glass and stare, so I brought these bystanders directly into the room with us instead. I thought it would make the game more intense or claustrophobic, but it definitely missed the mark. It just sort of looks like a family vacation photo now, and it's way funnier than it is creepy. Okay, maybe it's still a bit unnerving. As for the player character, we are clearly missing an important piece of the puzzle here. Due to the game camera's usual perspective, the head had to be removed from your model. Otherwise, it would show up during gameplay, as you can see here. You can probably tell, but I was able to toggle these individual body pieces back on, which may have been a mistake in hindsight. I managed to turn the facial features on without the head, creating this nightmarish cryptid. I spent so much time thinking if I could, I didn't stop to think if I should. I put them back together again, and then I removed most of the features except for the eyes this time, so now he sort of resembles a Goomba from the live-action Mario Bros. Movie. There are some items in this game that can impact the player's physical appearance, including removing an eye. I assume these models were built this way, so they can be changed easily when certain items are applied, or even removed, by certain side effects. They were certainly not meant to be used this way, of that I'm certain. So, as the round begins, you're given a selection of items to choose from that will hopefully help turn the odds in your favor. These items pop out of this little cubby in the wall and are randomized each time. When we grab each of our items, the tray will slide back inside, hidden by a small panel, and clip all the way out into the void. After a few seconds, the items on top will disappear, and the tray stays here indefinitely. There's a secret to these items that you probably don't know too. As you know, the player is presented with a set of items where they can select 2 of them to keep. These items are pretty game-changing, so having more than your opponent would make quite an unfair advantage. Well, believe it or not, you can do exactly that. Even after the items had slid out of sight and into the void space, I was able to grab the remaining items from the tray right before they disappeared. That means I am now in possession of all 4 items that were offered to me, while my opponent could only get 2. He'd probably be mad that I was breaking cyberspace to cheat the system, but I don't know that there's much going on in the head. The developers didn't put a failsafe in place to prevent you from taking the items after the tray exits, so they can always be taken as long as they haven't unloaded. This means if you're really quick about it, you can actually grab a 3rd item during a regular playthrough too. It's not easy to achieve, but once you get the hang of it, you'll always have the upper hand on your opponent. I imagine you could get all 4 if you're quick enough, but I could only get 3 when I attempted it. Back inside the map, the screen that shows which pills are being dispensed has just clipped through the glass and into view. There is an animation for this, but your perspective is locked during this animation, so you can't see it breaking through the window. At this point, you can see from inside the machine that the pills will appear out of sight, dropping down as the machine returns to the observation room. When the player picks up a pill, it floats up in front of your face and then disappears right after. There isn't a need for an animation here, since you can't ever see it from this angle. When your opponent takes one, the pill appears in front of their face and they unhinge their jaw like a snake. This is terrifying in slow motion, and I'm regretting all my life choices by this point. Weirdly, the capsule appears in the center of the table briefly, just to vanish again. In the next round, he made a bad choice, grabbing the wrong capsule and clocking out. When this occurs, the revive machine stored above will spring to action, unfolding and coming down to bring our friend back. The needle, which really just clips through the rest of the model, plunges into this open spot and gets things going again. The exaggerated head swing is no better in bowl time either, by the way. The player doesn't have a death animation, of course, since we wouldn't be alive to see it anyway. On this turn, I used the pliers to do some emergency dental work for my opponent, and the tooth just sort of vanished instead of appearing on the table. I learned shortly after that it was forever dropping into the void, so I warped it back up into the map on the off chance it could be reattached. Sadly, it's out for keeps, but at least he can take home a souvenir from the competition. I then attempted to break things further by deleting one of his items, but the placebo effect is crazy strong with this one. The candy was completely gone, but he still managed to take it through sheer force of will. There wasn't even anything there, but the game still let him use it, which is probably some form of karmic justice. As I mentioned earlier, some items can have a direct impact on your player model. In this case, my opponent popped one of his peepers out to remove my resistance by 1 level. When I used the item, it made an eyeball appear from thin air, appearing inside the device and sending it to the other side of the table for delivery. This whole thing is pretty gross, and this sequence is no exception. By this point, I'd eaten way too many of the forbidden Smarties, and my most prominent side effect was doom. Fortunately, in our newfound afterlife, we can take a look at the lost screen from another perspective. First off, there's a person on the gurney here that we can typically only see from the legs down. That's because the top half is straight up aura farming, T-posing away with a big smile on his face. The gurney itself never moves from its starting location either, and the wall behind it will move past instead. You'd think this place would eventually run out of wall, but nope. A new piece will appear to keep this hallway moving endlessly. We went from a terrifying game of roulette to a perpetually expanding morgue. Patient 241 is simply not having a good day. On the tag, you'll find that we're a 32-year-old male who was apparently 7 feet tall. But that's not what most caught my eye. The developers hid something sneaky here that you would never see from a regular viewpoint. Right next to the string, there's a piece of text that reads, small text you won't be able to actually read, but it sounds important. I feel personally called out. Finding tiny bits of pointless text is exactly what I do here. Right next to this guy, we can see our player model sitting in midair. He hasn't changed poses from the actual match, and this medal serves a specific purpose that I didn't realize at first. Behind the infinite wall, we can find the assets used for this defeat screen, and the photo used in this case is displaying the model we just looked at. It's a neat way to pull this off, and our character has never looked better. I mean this literally, since he moves around with idle animations when the game is unpaused, so our death was greatly exaggerated. Let's jump back into a game and take a look at some side effects now. So in the first round, my opponent began experiencing a bit of double vision. Each of their eyes have actually duplicated, meaning he now has 4 pupils in total. After a few more rounds, his eyes became surrounded by this dark texture. It's a lot more visible because he removed one of them, and the next symptom didn't help his case much. The following effect resulted in this yellowish color taking over the rest of his eye. Unfortunately, he didn't last much longer after this though, so I had to start a new match. The match started with my opponent popping his eye out again, and the first capsule he consumed resulted in these super dilated eyes. I'm pretty certain he's seeing colors only mantis shrimp and some birds can see. So I can imagine he's having a pretty rough time at the moment. On the next round, he took another, this time changing his eye to this strange goat-shaped pupil. I also noticed that when this takes place, his eyes roll back into his head to hide the change as it occurs. This poor guy can't catch a break with his one good eye, and it didn't get any better. After this, his skin started shifting to a green color in patches, with these boils appearing on his arms and hands. After a bit, his skin was covered in these discolored patches, and he started to resemble the moldy bit of bread that got left in the bag for way too long. I'm not sure how he's still kicking, because it looks like he's a few minutes from starring in The Last of Us. Things got worse when the drawer opened to provide our items, and his head snapped to the side in a very unnatural way. You'd think with everything we've seen so far that this wouldn't be too bad, but in this lighting, it's going to haunt me for a very long time. Each time an item is provided, he'll twist his head like this to scope out the goods. Officially, I believe I've seen too much. Now the game typically takes place in this tiny room with only 2 seats, but there's also a multiplayer option where up to 4 people can play at once. This is what that space looks like from another perspective, and it's just slightly bigger than the previous. There are 4 chairs inside with an item dispenser, and the various tools needed to keep you alive and well. Alive anyway. There are a few set of windows that you can't see beyond during gameplay, but a closer look reveals that these rooms were a sham. There's nothing inside these spaces, just an empty floor, and some of the map assets clipping through the walls. When looking out of bounds, there's a random floating wall out here that I can't really place. It's probably just a wall they copy and pasted during the map's construction, but I can't say with certainty. I manually loaded the map in, so despite being in multiplayer, there was nobody here. Nobody except this default NPC anyway. Now as for the other levels we'll come across, this is what the multiplayer end screen looks like from another angle. The whole map is broken up into these separate pieces, using forced perspective to create the illusion of a finished room. The entire level's build consists of only 3 solid objects: the floor, the back wall, and this viewing window in the front. Once again, I loaded this place in myself, and so there aren't any side effects to speak of. So these 2 dapper lads are just hanging out like it's picture day. Next, this is a scene displayed after winning a round of single player. It's a room that was once again cobbled together using very few assets, and the doctor is working away in the empty void space. This area makes a lot more sense when viewed from a regular perspective, but for the time being, we're seeing it without the forced perspective doing all the heavy lifting. Your usual view of this room is super tight and uncomfortable, so it's weirdly refreshing to see from this angle. In case you were curious, this is what the doctor looks like from up close. He's a shadowy figure, without any details to speak of. Just a flat model, and a really creepy grin. I'm getting some serious Sin City vibes from our medical professional here, and regardless of what he's doing to us, I'd like a second opinion. He should probably have his medical license revoked since I was actually over here the whole time, so I have no clue what he was doing over there. While the doctor is cutting away, I'm crazy frogging it up next to this wall, where the same method for the death screen is used for the photograph. Also, if we so rich, how come we can't afford no floor? The entire area's construction makes no sense. There's no ground to walk on here, and the ceiling has this huge empty space above it, like there's supposed to be something there. This whole situation is a bit crazy and kinda stressing me out, so I tried to remove the doctor so I'd have some breathing space. All I ended up doing was creating Shadow Tobor from Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which surprisingly didn't make me feel any better. I think it's time to put a pin in the clinical trials, folks. Turning into Shrek earlier was one thing, but the logic to defying surgery space is just a step too far. And with that, that's everything I found behind the scenes and off camera in side effects. Thanks for watching, and cheers!